As soon as December begins, the jolly and the happiest moments of Christmas are starting to show up in the heart of every man. The music, the Christmas decorations, the Christmas markets bring a powerful atmosphere around us, making us enjoy every moment with the ones close to us. And when it comes to Christmas movies that can be watched with friends and family, as I said it last year, there are many choices out there for you, from old to new movies, to live action and animation, from classics to the ones that are not that well known by the audience. I always heard about a film that is considered one of the greatest of all time, a film that is kinda a must to watch every time there is Christmas time. I didn't have the chance when I was a kid to watch it. The television networks from my region did not play that film, but I heard about it all the time. Oh, you have to watch this movie, it's one of the greatest. So, naturally, I looked for it to watch it when I had the chance. The film in question is called It's a Wonderful Life, and is one of the movies that are considered a cult classic. In a way, it became a tradition to watch this film during the holidays, and now, after watching it in the last few years quite often, I do understand why. It's a Wonderful Life is a film directed by Frank Capra that was released all the way back in 1946 and stars James Stewart, Donna Reed, and Lionel Barrymore, in a story about this man called George Bailey, a man who gave up his dreams and chances to help the people of his town, only now to have great issues and wanting to end his life during Christmas Eve. But he is saved by his guardian angel, Clarence, who shows him a world in which George was never born, realizing his life touched so many people, making George to appreciate the life he has. This is like a very short presentation of the story, and honestly, I do not think I do justice to it. The story is made in a way to truly attach yourself as a viewer to George. You see his life, how kind of a man he is, how innocent and pure his actions are. You instantly start to like him, to appreciate him. This connection of the viewer with the main character, this might be the reason why everyone is loving this movie? What makes it special after all? There are quite a lot of Christmas stories, whether we talk about a novel, a movie, or a cartoon, but this one is incredibly special. Why? I think I know why. From the first moments of the film, there is something that attracts the viewer's attention in an instant. People are praying for their neighbor, their friend, their husband, their father, and all those persons are talking about one person, George Bailey. The prayers are heard even by the angels, who sends the angel Clarence to help George on this crucial night on Christmas Eve. The structure of the film's introduction is simple and beautiful at the same time. Capra does not speak with the viewer through the images to tell you, hey, this is the story of this guy who might be anyone else in this world. No, not at all. The way Capra is making the movie, he is telling you who the important one is in the context of the film. Everyone knows there is something off with George Bailey. Apparently even the angels know the night the story is happening is quite crucial for the world and for George. But the viewer doesn't know who George is. It is made curious about him, wondering who truly is the guy. So Capra is telling you from the beginning this is not someone's story. This is George's story. George is the type of person who embodies everything that is pure and good in mankind. He had to give up his traveling dreams, he had to give up college, he had to maintain his family's business, he helped a lot of people when it was necessary, even on his wedding day. George is presented as the person who touched so many lives through his actions that is incredibly important for those who are around him and apparently to other people from the world. I have to get to that later. What Capra is saying, this film is not the story of a random person who discovers the spirit of Christmas and understands what kindness is in this world. No, this story is about the one person who is good, who lost his faith and has to find out all those good deeds were not made just to be made, who is the person that we all know and who didn't ask for anything back, who embodies everything Christmas represents, and now he needs a good hand of help. But a good and kind main character must always have in a way a great villain, a guy who tries to win in its evil deeds. And this movie does not fail to present this antithesis at all. What is truly amazing and pure to this film, in my opinion, is the way the good and the bad characters are perfectly represented, to instantly know as a viewer who is who. George is the good character through and through. There is no doubt about that. But the villain, Mr. Potter, has the perfect elements to truly feel from the moment you see him on the screen that he's a truly very bad guy. Well, within the boundaries of the story. He is selfish, he thinks only to profit, he tries to control everything and everyone. The classical type of a villain. It is truly amazing how the character is presented to the viewer. The first time you see Mr. Potter is just a grumpy old man who walks with a carriage throughout the town, but when he speaks for the first time and has a discussion with Mr. Bailey, George's father, you instantly see what type of man he is. Come to think of it, Mr. Potter remains quite constant throughout the film. Why am I saying that? The element of purity is what makes this film to be quite special, and in a way, you realize that throughout the film, in moments that matter quite a lot. The way the viewer sees Mr. Potter is the same way George saw him when he was 12 years old, like this old man who doesn't care for anyone and wants to have everything. As George grows, he sees him exactly as he saw him from the beginning, as this old man who is cunning, who is selfish. However, George matures and becomes a great adult, who is kind and a great person, and his innocence remains probably much more pure than it was when he was a kid. And even though we, as viewers, and George as an adult, know who Mr. Potter is, we cannot ignore the fact we see Mr. Potter as an unchanged man throughout the years. Everyone else's character evolved one way or another, but he was and will always be that type of old rich guy who thinks he owns everything, who was seen for the first time when George was 12 years old and remained like that for the rest of the film. This consistency of the villain makes the film feel completed. You do not need a detailed background for the villain to understand him. You just need to watch him a couple of times and understand who he is. It is all that you need to do. And in this case, the villain is perfectly made. You see how he acts and cares for what is around him, and you understand he will be a threat sometime in the future that will try anything to stop the main character to achieve his dreams and, technically, be him for what it is. The characters are what make this film memorable, is it true, but the story is also one of those elements that pop into my head. To me, the story has a certain rhythm and a certain vibe that truly makes the viewer feel emotional. All those moments when George had to renounce his dream in order to help his little brother or help his father's company, the viewer feels the disappointment and the resignation on George's face. The story tries to balance good and bad moments in a way that could create a roller coaster of emotion. You feel happiness and childish innocence when the romantic scenes are present on the screen. You feel sadness when you see George dealing with issues of life or other moments that might present an obstacle for George. But when the story of the film is bringing every single feeling all at once in the heart of the viewer, is the ending. Somehow, that moment of full hope, of joy, of happiness is made in a way to truly make you cry. Seeing all those people coming to help George to raise money for the bank, even the bank accountant who came to execute George, and the cops who came to arrest him, is a moment that one way or another makes the viewer feel something that cannot be described in words. This moment wouldn't have worked if the structure of the film would be different. Making the viewer know George for half of the movie, and then presenting the world in which George wouldn't be born, in which his good deeds were non-existent, and every person and element is the worst outcome possible that anyone could think of, made the viewer to truly appreciate that final moment in a totally amazing way. It makes the viewer be there in that certain moment, celebrating and enjoying the moment with George and his family. When it comes to immersing the viewer into a film's story, I think this is one of the best moments that I ever saw being presented on the screen. No wonder people love this film so much. It makes you feel the true spirit of Christmas and is a feeling that you do not want to forget at all. It makes everyone be good with one another. There is a feeling of familiarity that I feel every time I watch this film. There is something regarding it in the way it is made that makes you think you have seen this story before, even though it is the first time you watch the film. And I'm talking not only about the similarity with other movies, but other stories also, more exactly, Christmas stories. Capra is beginning the film with an intro in which the title is present just like it is a magical story. Then he starts to tell you about George when he was a kid, then a young adult. It is presented to you the moment he fell in love, he got married, everything balanced with the real-life moments in which he has to face the reality of the context and starts to deal with Mr. Potter and real-life issues, only to end the story with a short visit to the other world and coming back to truly appreciate and love the life that he has. The best way to arrange the moments in order to fully present a story with all its magic and important details, in my opinion. But first, I realized something that looked familiar to me in the way the story was structured. The moment the angels started to tell George's story in order for Clarence and the viewer to know him and understand him, I realized that moment reminded me a bit about Citizen Kane. The way the story was presented from the perspective of another character talking about the main character, it reminded me about the structure of Kane, which in a way I think it is expected. After all, It's a Wonderful Life was created 5 years after Orson Welles created the greatest film of all time. When it comes to the similarities with other movies, this is what I felt. But then I started to read about the film from where it was inspired to. The film presents feelings that could be connected with Charles Dickens' story, A Christmas Carol, and it gives you this sensation that you know this film from somewhere because of the way it tells the story. It uses narrative points and the way the characters are, they are truly similar. Mr. Potter has a certain feeling that is Ebenezer Scrooge from A Christmas Carol, a grumpy old man that only cares for himself and not anyone else. This feeling is totally enhanced if you know a little background information about Lionel Barrymore. You see, back in the 1940s, Lionel was popular due to the annual radio drama presentations of A Christmas Carol, in which he portrayed Scrooge. So you can totally say that Scrooge is actually in the film, only with another name. Barrymore's performance, even though it is made slightly different, makes you think of this similarity, and if you learn of this interesting small connection, the film gets a certain aura that makes the film feel much more classic and perfect for Christmas time, and adds a new interpretation for Mr. Potter that can be extrapolated later in theories if you want to make connections between the characters. Another thing that made it interesting was the source of inspiration for the story. For those who are fans of classic novels and short stories, there is a 1943 story called The Greatest Gift, written by Philip Van Doren Stern, which is the story of a man who contemplates to end his life during the Christmas Eve, but is helped by his guardian angel to see a world in which he was never born in order to appreciate his life. Sounds familiar? Stern inspired himself from A Christmas Carol with a showing of another type of life of the main character, just like how Dickens used the ghosts of Christmas to make Scrooge become a kind man. Maybe I am going way too much in detail, but once I knew all of these pieces of information, I truly understood why this film is one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time. Capra took every good detail and interesting element not only from Stern's story but also from Dickens and merged them into this movie, making a great story that can be seen by anyone. The film, just like Stern and Dickens' stories, presents the same message and promotes the same feeling of goodness and appreciation for what we have, the same message of unity and kindness that is present during Christmas, but in its own unique way. And even if you do not realize those connections with other stories, or sources of inspirations more likely, the film embodies the feeling of a happy ending in a way that might be, as I said, familiar and understood by anyone. I appreciated this film from the first time I saw it and made me want to watch it over and over again, thanks to its positive message, but knowing now all those details about its inspirations, it gives a certain special aura to the film, one that can be interpreted as timeless. I still try to understand though what is the connection between the adventures of Tom Sawyer with the film's story. Probably it might be the correlation between George and Tom and the way they gave up their dreams and did the right thing when it was necessary. Or it might be a connection between the world in which George was never born and the moment of the funeral from the novel. Whatever it might be, I think I have to rewatch the film and read again the novel to see the connection. But I am sure that if there is one, it will add more things to the movie to make it more incredible on this part of small hidden messages that give the film this aura of amazing and joyful creation. The cinematographic style of the film is another thing that makes the experience more magical and makes the story more enjoyable. The film shot in which the viewer sees the universe that represents the angels is made with such a pure intention, yet you understand that even the universe wants to help George. Another thing that I like is how Capra is detailing at the beginning of the film each part of the town that is praying for George, moving from the furthest part of the town closer and closer to George's house, giving you not only the location of the story, but telling you in a way how many people George has influenced in his life. I like from the point of view of the editing method of the film, how the story is making you stay for almost the entire film to know George and understand him. Of course, the viewer becomes Clarence for all this time, making the viewer in a way to participate in George's salvation. The film is edited quite classic in the cinematic style of the 1940s Hollywood, and the soundtrack of the film is made to truly put in evidence not only the good and bad moments of the film, but also while presenting them to give the viewer this feeling that everything will be alright and somehow the things are gonna unfold as they should be. The special effects are quite clean and I like the use of them to make the film to be more fantastic than it already is. I was always amazed by the ingenuity of the old movies to create innovative methods to present fantasy and amazing elements into their story. Whether we talked about certain methods of filmmaking or practical effects, the old movies have a certain flair that makes the story seem credible. It's a Wonderful Life is one of those movies. Its flow and the way it is made help the movie be an attraction for every generation of viewers. And being a black and white film adds something retro to the feeling. From what I have seen, there is a colored version of the movie that gives a different, unique feeling regarding the story, making it truly like an old story that is lived right there with you every time. Personally, I prefer the black and white version somehow. It makes me want to imagine more about the story, to think about other elements that are presented on the screen, but the colored version is also magical in its way. In the end, I think that it depends on the viewer which version of the film might want to watch. Both versions are amazing and will present a magical story in a unique and beautiful way. Overall, the cinematographic style of the film helps a lot to move the viewer forward in its adventure. You do not need too many things to enjoy a good story, and this film does that. I watched this film a lot of times over the past few years and I cannot get enough of this movie. I like it a lot. It has a certain magic that makes me want to see it over and over again. Probably the positive message of the film or the connections that are made with other Christmas stories makes me appreciate this film more. But I do not want to think to that much. This is a film that can be put on repeat every single year and you will not get tired of it. There are other Christmas movies out there, whether we talk about animation or live action, but I think everyone who saw this film, they put it on their list of Christmas movies that will be watched during the holidays. Compared with other holiday movies, it might be too simple or too, I don't know, predictable, or maybe for some, too long, but I believe that after all, the feeling that you have while you watch the film is what that matters. It touches your heart in a unique way. And stripping aside the Christmas magic that surrounds this film, It's a Wonderful Life is a great movie. I do not know what to say anymore. Even though I watched it again this year, maybe I will watch it again. I feel like I recharge myself with positive energy while I watch it. I kinda need that. For those who might be interested in watching this film and they didn't see it, go ahead and do it. It will be a nice experience. No, it will be a wonderful experience.